We've all imagined traveling in time. What if the people you loved years ago?
A traveler who passes a lie detector test to a man from the future who earned a fortune on the stock market.
Stories of people slipping across centuries have always stirred the imagination, but some stories refuse to fade away. From carefully documented encounters in the manicured gardens of Versailles to viral images that ignite online frenzies, the world continues to encounter accounts of travelers who claim to have breached the limits of time. Today, we're exploring some of the most shocking time travel confessions you weren't supposed to hear. Let's get started. Number 10. John Titor. Between late 2000 and early 2001, an anonymous figure using the name John Titor became a sensation on early internet discussion boards, first appearing on the Time Travel Institute forum in November 2000 and later on the Art Bell-associated Post to Post and Above Top Secret boards.
I had facts when I heard other time travelers calling in from any time past the year 2500 AD.
He claimed to be a soldier from the year 2036, sent back in time on a military mission to retrieve an obsolete IBM 5100 computer needed to debug legacy programs threatened by a future Unix 2038 type bug. The IBM 5100 was a real portable computer introduced in September 1975, and at the time, only specialists knew it contained hidden functions, allowing it to emulate older mainframe code. This added credibility to his story for many. Titor described his time displacement unit as mounted in a 1967 Chevrolet Corvette, or, in other posts, a 1987 Chevrolet Suburban, and he included diagrams with specifications such as 2 magnetic micro-singularities, dual electron injection manifolds, and a standard offset Tipler sinusoid. His posts, numbering in the hundreds, were written in a question and answer style and often contained military or scientific jargon. He predicted that political tensions in the United States would lead to a civil war beginning around 2004, culminating in a brief but intense global nuclear exchange in 2015 that would kill millions and devastate major cities, after which the nation would reorganize into 5 semi-autonomous regions. Well, we all know how that went. In any case, interest quickly spread beyond the forums. Radio host Art Bell received faxes signed John Titor as early as 1998, and coast-to-coast AM listeners followed the story closely. By mid-2001, mainstream outlets such as the Miami Herald, the South Florida Sun-Sentinel, and later investigative segments on the Sci-Fi Channel documented the phenomenon. Researchers and journalists, including investigative attorney Larry Haber, whose family was linked to the original posting's IP address in Florida, examined the case but found no verifiable evidence of time travel. Analyses show that none of Titor's specific dated predictions, including the Civil War and 2015 nuclear conflict, came to pass, but others were more convincing. Let's move on. Number 9. Andrew Carlson. In March 2003, a striking headline began circulating through a network of American and international tabloids, most prominently in the Weekly World News, about a mysterious investor named Andrew Carlson. Allegedly, the 44-years-old Carlson had turned an initial stake of $800 into $350 million in just 2 weeks by making 126 consecutive high-risk stock trades on the US equity markets, all of which were profitable. According to the article, the US Securities and Exchange Commission flagged the trades as statistically impossible under normal market conditions.
Bursting of the dot-com bubble and accounting scandals in several blue-chip companies,
and coordinated his arrest with the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The tabloid report asserted that during interrogation, Carlson confessed to being a time traveler from the year 2256, claiming he had detailed knowledge of future stock movements and major geopolitical events. He supposedly offered to disclose information about the location of Osama bin Laden and a cure for AIDS in exchange for leniency and a promise to let him return to his own era. The same story described a mysterious benefactor posting $1 million in bail and Carlson disappearing without a trace before a scheduled court date. No dates for his supposed trades were given, but the story placed the activity on US exchanges such as the NASDAQ and New York Stock Exchange during late 2002 and early 2003, when the Dow Jones Industrial Average hovered between 7,500 and 8,500 points after the dot-com crash. Despite the vivid details, no verifiable evidence of Carlson's existence has ever surfaced. Journalists and fact-checking organizations, including Snopes.com, Hoax Slayer, and later financial compliance outlets such as Compliance Week, searched SEC enforcement records, federal court filings, and FBI arrest logs, and found no person by that name connected to any insider trading investigation in 2002 or 2003. The SEC has publicly stated it has no record of such a case. Researchers also traced the story's earliest appearance to the Weekly World News. Mainstream newspapers that repeated the tale were citing that single source, while every key detail, from the improbable 126 winning trades to the alleged time travel confession, remains uncorroborated. The story persists. Number 8. Carl M. Allen and the Philadelphia Experiment. In 1955, astronomer and writer Morris Ketchum Jessup received a series of unsolicited letters that launched one of the most enduring American naval legends. The letters were written by Carl Meredith Allen, a Pennsylvania native born in 1925, who also used the alias Carlos Allende. Allen claimed that while serving aboard the SS Andrew Furuseth, a merchant ship, he had witnessed an extraordinary U.S. Navy experiment at the Philadelphia Naval Shipyard in October 1943. According to his account, the destroyer escort USS Eldridge was outfitted with advanced electromagnetic equipment that briefly made it invisible to radar and the naked eye, and even teleported it from Philadelphia to Norfolk, Virginia.
Top secret program that became known as the Philadelphia Experiment.
Roughly 200 miles away, before it returned to its original position. Allen expanded his claims by mailing Jessup a paperback copy of Jessup's own book, The Case for the UFO, that he had heavily annotated. The marginalia, written in multiple inks and in different voices, referenced supposed people topside and exotic physics concepts, implying secret knowledge of interdimensional travel. Jessup, intrigued and concerned, contacted the Office of Naval Research in Washington, D.C. In 1957, ONR officers had a private printer, the Varro Manufacturing Company of Texas, produce about 127 spiral-bound copies of the annotated book for internal circulation. This Varro edition became the core document of what came to be known as the Philadelphia Experiment. Over the years, Allen's own statements shifted dramatically. He alternated between insisting on the reality of the event and admitting to fabrications. In conversations with researchers during the 1960s and 70s, including science writer Robert Gorman, Allen acknowledged that portions of his account were hoaxed or exaggerated, though he often reverted to claiming hidden truths. The US Navy has repeatedly stated that the USS Eldridge was never in Philadelphia in October 1943, and that no experiment to render a vessel invisible or to achieve teleportation ever took place. But the story lives on. This next one is even wilder. Number 7. Al Bielek and Duncan Cameron. Beginning in the late 1980s, Alfred Al Bielek began giving public interviews and conference talks in which he described extraordinary experiences tied to what became known as the Montauk Project.
Project Montauk is the name given to a top-secret project in which a series of inhumane experiments.
Bielek claimed that he and his brother, identified in related accounts as Duncan Cameron, were part of covert US government programs conducted at Camp Hero Air Force Station, located near Montauk Point, Long Island, New York. The former radar facility, decommissioned in 1981, was a real Cold War installation equipped with a massive Sage radar tower and underground bunkers. According to Bielek's testimony, he and Duncan were originally crew members on the USS Eldridge during the alleged Philadelphia experiment of 1943, where the Navy supposedly attempted radar invisibility and inadvertently opened a space-time portal. Bielek asserted that he and Duncan leapt from the ship during that experiment and emerged decades later at Montauk, drawn into further government projects. He described time tunnels and zero-time reference generators that allegedly enabled controlled travel through time and space. He claimed that he spent 6 weeks in the year 2137, where he observed advanced medical technology and a drastically altered coastline of the United States, and then 2 additional years in 2749 and onwards, before being returned to his original timeline. Bielek's presentations became staples at UFO and paranormal conventions in the United States during the 1990s, and he appeared on radio programs such as Art Bell's Coast to Coast AM, reaching large late-night audiences. He and Duncan Cameron were also central figures in Preston Nichols's self-published book series, beginning with the Montauk Project, Experiments in Time, which also covered mind control research, extraterrestrial contact, and interdimensional portals allegedly operated beneath Camp Hero. Number 6. Rudolph Fentz. The story of Rudolph Fentz first gained wide attention in the early 1950s, describing a man dressed in late 19th century clothing who supposedly appeared suddenly in the middle of Times Square, New York City, around June 1950. According to the tale, he wore a silk vest, a high-collared coat, and shoes with 19th century style buckles, and he carried items such as old banknotes dated in the 1870s, a copper token for a beer worth 5 cents from a saloon no longer in existence, and a letter postmarked June 1876. Witnesses allegedly said he appeared confused, darted into traffic, and was struck and killed by a car.
But before anyone can say a word, a speeding cab barrels towards him. And just like that, he's gone.
When New York police investigated, the story claimed they found that a man named Rudolph Fentz had disappeared without a trace in 1876, and he matched the stranger's description. For decades, the account circulated in newspapers, magazines, and later on radio and television programs about unexplained mysteries. It was often presented as a straightforward report of an inexplicable event. However, archival research eventually revealed that the earliest appearance of this narrative was not in any police blotter or New York newspaper, but in a 1951 short story titled I'm Scared, written by science fiction author Jack Finney and published in Collier's magazine. The story included all the key details that later appeared in the supposed case file. In 1953, a Spanish-language magazine reprinted the story but dropped its fictional framing, presenting it as an actual incident. From there, European newspapers, including publications in Germany and Austria, repeated the account as if it were fact. Folklorists and fact-checkers, notably Chris Olbeck and the team at Snopes.com, have documented this chain of transmission and confirmed that no New York City death records, police reports, or contemporary 1950s newspapers mention the Rudolph Fentz. The New York Public Library and City Archives likewise hold no such case. Number 5. Father Pellegrino Ernetti and the chronovisor. In the mid-20th century, the Benedictine priest Father Pellegrino Maria Ernetti, an accomplished scholar of ancient music and a longtime member of the Benedictine Abbey of San Giorgio Maggiore in Venice, stated in private circles that he was collaborating with an elite scientific team to construct a machine capable of observing past events. By the 1960s and 1970s, he began granting interviews in which he publicly described this invention, which he called the chronovisor. Ernetti said the project involved a small group of distinguished experts that allegedly included Enrico Fermi, the Italian physicist and Nobel laureate, and Werner von Braun, the German-American aerospace engineer. According to Ernetti, the chronovisor worked by detecting and amplifying residual electromagnetic radiation and sound waves that, he believed, never fully disappear from the universe. He described the device as resembling a large cabinet or television set fitted with antenna-like sensors and a complex array of cathode ray tubes.
Spoke several languages, he dabbled in electronics, physics, and even the occult arts.
In interviews recorded by Italian journalist Vincenzo Spezzi and published in periodicals such as the weekly magazine La Domenica del Corriere in May 1972, Ernetti claimed he had personally used the chronovisor to witness major historical events. Among his reported observations were a performance of the Roman tragedy Thyestes by Quintus Ennius, for which he said he later reconstructed a missing Latin text, and a vivid recording of the Last Supper of Jesus Christ, describing specific gestures and words of Christ and the apostles. He also spoke of viewing a speech by Napoleon Bonaparte and scenes from ancient Rome during the reign of Emperor Trajan. Despite these detailed statements, no physical evidence of the chronovisor has ever been produced. Number 4. Time-traveling cell phone. This mystery traces back to a piece of film shot at the Hollywood premiere of Charlie Chaplin's The Circus on January 6, 1928, at Grauman's Chinese Theatre in Los Angeles. The footage, included as bonus material on a 2010 DVD release, shows a crowd outside the theatre. In one brief segment, a woman in a dark coat and hat walks past the camera holding an object to her ear and speaking, apparently in mid-conversation. Modern viewers quickly noticed how closely her gesture resembled someone using a mobile phone, decades before wireless handsets existed. Researchers and technology historians responded by analyzing the context and available evidence. Wireless telephony in the late 1920s was in its infancy, limited to experimental ship-to-shore radios that required bulky equipment and external antennas. No commercially available handheld device capable of cellular communication existed until the 1970s. Archivists confirmed that the footage was authentic to 1928 and had not been digitally altered. The most widely accepted explanation emerged from costume and medical historians, who noted that portable hearing aid devices were marketed in the late 1920s by companies such as Siemens and Acousticon. These aids often featured a small, rectangular microphone unit held near the ear and a hidden wire running to a battery pack or amplifier concealed in clothing, which matches the woman's posture and hand placement. Despite these mundane possibilities, the cell phone story continues to circulate. The clip has been regularly cited in compilations of alleged time travel evidence. Number 3. The Andrew Basiago and Project Pegasus claims. Andrew D. Basiago, an American attorney born September 18, 1961, in Morristown, New Jersey.
Having been born in September of '61. And I had a wave of trepidation, some of that Bart Simpson.
Is the principal source of the claims surrounding a covert US government initiative he calls Project Pegasus, beginning in public interviews around 2004 and continuing through lectures, conference appearances and filings connected to his 2016 independent campaign for US president. Basiago has described his alleged involvement as a child participant in top-secret experiments conducted from the late 1960s through the early 1970s. He identifies the program as operating under the umbrella of the Defense Advanced Research Projects Agency, or DARPA, then officially known as the Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA. According to Basiago's testimony, Project Pegasus centered on the development of quantum teleportation and chronovision. Technologies, he says, enabled both instantaneous travel across great distances and observation of past and future events. He recounts that his father, Raymond F. Basiago, whom he describes as an engineer with government defense contractors such as Ralph M. Parsons Company, introduced him to the program when Andrew was between 6 and 10 years old. He claims to have attended sessions at facilities in East Hanover, New Jersey, and at sites in New Mexico, including the Los Alamos National Laboratory, where he says experimental teleportation chambers were located. Basiago's most vivid narrative concerns a trip to Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, in November 1863, where he asserts he witnessed President Abraham Lincoln's Gettysburg Address after being transported via a plasma confinement chamber. he has publicly compared an 1863 photograph archived in the US Library of Congress to his childhood appearance, suggesting that one of the unidentified boys near the speaker's platform is himself. Other episodes he describes include visits to future centuries and encounters with prominent historical figures. Throughout the 2000s and 20s, Basiago has repeated these statements on radio programs such as Coast to Coast AM, at disclosure conferences, and in detailed online essays. Journalists, physicists, and government historians who have investigated the story report no supporting documentation in DARPA archives, federal budgets, or declassified Cold War research records. No independent evidence of the described technology exists. Nonetheless, Basiago's first-person testimony remains fully available. Number 2. The Time-Travelling Hipster. In April 2010, the Provincial Museum in British Columbia, Canada, known as the Brushton Museum, now the Braylorn Pioneer Museum, posted a digitized black and white photograph to its online archives.
Does anyone in this picture look weird to you? Because for the past 14 years, the internet's been trying to figure out why one specific person looks like they don't belong here.
That quickly attracted worldwide attention. The image, labeled Opening of the South Fork Bridge, 1941, depicts a large crowd gathered near Gold Bridge, British Columbia, to celebrate the completion of a small suspension bridge. Among the men in suits, women in hats, and typical early 1940s attire stands a single man whose appearance struck viewers as strikingly out of place. The figure, quickly nicknamed the time-traveling hipster, wears dark wraparound sunglasses, a graphic t-shirt with a stylized M logo, and what many online commentators described as a lightweight zip-front sweater or hoodie. He also appears to be holding a small portable camera resembling a compact modern device, and possibly a bottle or a drink cup. Within days of the photograph's release, blogs and social media platforms circulated side-by-side comparisons to contemporary streetwear, arguing that the man's fashion sense was decades ahead of the early 1940s. Researchers soon established verifiable details of the image itself. The photograph is an authentic gelatin silver print taken in 1941 and catalogued in the museum's archival collection for decades, long before digital editing tools could have inserted a modern figure. However, photographic historians and costume experts quickly pointed out that each supposedly modern element had period-accurate explanations. The sunglasses resemble Renshaw Glacier goggles and other wraparound protective eyewear sold to skiers and mountaineers in the late 1930s and early 1940s. The printed shirt could easily be a Montreal Maroons hockey sweater, whose block letter M logo matches the visible design. Lightweight knit cardigans with zippers were also available from catalog retailers such as Sears, Roebuck and Company by 1938, and portable cameras like the Kodak Folding Pocket series were common consumer items. While no individual has ever claimed to be the man in the picture, nor confessed to time travel, the documented provenance of the 1941 photo and the careful period verification of each clothing item anchor the case firmly in fact. Strange, isn't it? Well, this next one is very impressive too. Number 1. The Moberly-Jourdain Incident. On the 10th of August 1901, two English academics, Charlotte Ann Moberly, the head of St. Hugh's College, Oxford, and Eleanor Jourdain, a lecturer and later principal of the same college, visited the Palace of Versailles while vacationing in France. They decided to explore the smaller retreat known as the Petit Trianon, a garden complex built for Marie Antoinette in the late 18th century. Their walk through the grounds became the basis of one of the most enduring time-slip stories of the 20th century. Both women later wrote that they felt an unusual heaviness and oppression as they followed a path away from the main tourist route. They described passing men in long grey-green coats and tricorn hats, a woman shaking a white cloth from a window, and an unfamiliar bridge. They then saw a lady in a pale summer dress and a wide-brimmed hat sketching on the lawn, whom they would later identify after research as Queen Marie Antoinette around the period of August 1792, shortly before the French Revolution reached Versailles. Moberly and Jourdain noted that some buildings and landscaping appeared different from modern maps, A kiosk and a small bridge were present in their experience, but absent when they returned days later. The two kept their observations private at first, but over the next several years, they compared diaries, examined Versailles estate records, and studied contemporary accounts of the ground's appearance in the 1790s. Convinced that they had witnessed scenes from more than a century earlier, they published their findings in 1911 under the pseudonyms Elizabeth Morrison and Francis Lamont in a book titled An Adventure. The book included detailed sketches of the paths and structures they remembered, along with historical citations matching some of the features to late 18th century plans. To this day, the story endures. Well, that's it for now. Thanks for watching. Did you like this video? If you did, please consider liking, dropping a comment, and hitting the subscribe button so that you don't miss out on our new uploads. Also, don't miss this video you see on your screen right now. It's truly unbelievable.